welcome back to Bumblebee. Like the writers before me, I'm here to tell you the tales of the top 10 messed up facts about Alexander the Great, who turns out wasn't so great. So, let's start with how he got the throne, Dad's demise. It starts with Pausanias, the lover of Alexander's father, Philip II, being cast aside because he started to grow facial hair. Ugh, Philip. Philip moved on to another Pausanias. We'll call that guy PB because the name must have been the Joe of ancient Macedonia. So, the original Paus then bullies the new lover PB into carelessly losing his life on the battlefield. Philip's brother happened to be a general named Attalus, and he was pissed that his brother's new boy toy, PB, died on the battlefield. His answer? Drugging Pausanias and letting a whole bunch of people have their way with him, from nobles to servants. Pausanias wakes up to be the laughingstock of the Macedonian court and traumatized. At this time, Olympias is trying to assert Alexander on the throne over the other potential heirs. History blurs here, as it's highly believed she aided Pausanias in his revenge because someone let him into the bedroom of Philip where he killed his former lover, the king. Pausanias' conspirator betrays him, and he was caught and killed and his body hung on a cross outside of the kingdom. Olympias meanwhile performed some horrific acts while Alexander was away to help secure him the throne, such as burning the other heirs alive and gifting Philip's widow the 3 grieving gifts: a rope, a dagger, and poison, aka pick your way out but you ain't staying here. So Alexander got to pull up and say, now it's my turn. Soon after the king's death, the 20-year-old Alexander was acclaimed as the new monarch by the aristocracy and the army. And guys, he was handed a fantastic set of cards by his father. Philip literally created the foundation for the Macedonian kingdom, and it was him who brought peace to the Macedonians and created their military force. It was him who gained power over Greece. Philip really was the mastermind, and Alexander got to eloquently ride on the coattails of that work. However, some questioned his claim to the throne, and to make things more complicated, some suspected both Alexander and Olympias of being involved in Philip's death. So, Alexander wasted no time. He was quick to eliminate all possible obstacles to his reign. How does one do that? Execute everyone, all his cousins, regardless of their sexes, as well as 2 Macedonian princesses, some uncles, and other family members. Besides the purging of the court, Alexander had to deal with several Greek city-states which used Philip's demise to revolt. In a swift and brutal campaign, the new king defeated the rebels through mass execution. Speaking of that campaign, wanna know why the people of Iran won't name their children Alexander to this day? The Inexcusable Purge. As you're soon to learn, Alex was a drunk, and at the excess goading of a Greek courtesan, aka a lady of the night, he loads up his boys like a bunch of tanked frat boys with a bad idea, and they went to go raise Persepolis to the ground. Unlike these previous battles, Alexander and his army marched right into the heart of the Great Persian Empire unopposed in 330 BCE. Once he was situated in the palace complex, Alexander gave his army free reign to sack Persepolis and its women, the first time he'd ever done that to a city that had willingly surrendered. And so, the men sieged the cities, the temples, and the homes of the innocent. The bravest amongst the citizens saw what was coming, and they set their own houses on fire with themselves inside of it. Others would put on their finest clothes and threw themselves from the roofs into the streets below. That is a real account. Take a second to recognize that that was the better fate. Sometime later, in fine Greek tradition, to blame women for the burn down the great palace of Xerxes, that working girl had spoken so eloquently of destroying the palace, I guess, that the blackout drunk Alexander grabbed the nearest torch and started the blaze himself, an act he almost immediately regretted, but it was too late. The palace was reduced to ash, and embarrassed historians try to ignore this event. But wait, there's more. Let's look at some of his other atrocities, shall we? Like the dragging of Deadweight. En route to Egypt in 332 BCE, Alexander faced an obstacle: the hilltop fortress of the town Gaza, ruled at the time by Persians. It's a marketplace that held riches of the Arabian caravan trade, including frankincense, gold, and myrrh. As a devout racist and egotist, why would Alexander simply go around when he could decimate it? The Macedonian army stormed the walls of Gaza but were driven back 3 times before succeeding. All the men of Gaza are killed, and the women and children, it's the usual fates he can think of in ancient times. The Roman author Quintus Curtius Rufus describes to us the death of the brave Persian governor Demise, who was brought before the young king, who was elated with haughty satisfaction, although he generally admired the courage even in an enemy. "You shall not have the death you wanted," he said. "Instead, you can expect to suffer whatever torment can be devised against a prisoner." Demise gave Alexander a look that was not just fearless, but downright defiant, and uttered not a word in reply to his threats. "Do you see the obstinate silence?" said Alexander. "Has he knelt to me? Has he uttered one word of entreaty? But I shall overcome his silence. At the very least, I shall punctuate it with groans." Alexander in his bratty anger did something so horrific most ancient historians omit the episode altogether. Inspired by Achilles, Alexander tied Demise to the chariot by his ankles and dragged him through the surrounding rocky desert desert of Gaza, even long after he was dead. And now to make matters worse, Alexander even kills his savior. In 334 BCE, at the Battle of Gratia's River, which was a glorified aristocratic melee, Alexander shanked the son-in-law of the great king of Persia right in the face, killing him. Naturally, that's a pretty gory and distracting thing to do, so Alexander doesn't notice the Persian nobleman Roseus until he strikes Alexander on the head with enough strength to break his helmet in two. Alexander, likely rocking a hell of a concussion, managed to swirl around and skewer Roe on a lance. But this is a John Wick battle scene, yo. It's non-stop, so Persia's satrap raised his sword to kill Alexander from behind, and veteran Macedonian soldier Black Cletus rushed to slice off the man's arm right as it hovered its death blow. The ancient sources attest that Alexander would have been killed in this moment if not for the close friend Cletus. Fast forward 6 years. Alexander is a twit and everyone is fed up, Cletus included. He confronts a very blackout drunk Alexander, who throws a javelin through Cletus's chest. Did Cletus provoke Alexander? Probably. But did he deserve to be killed in cold blood? Definitely not. The next day, Alexander sobers up and immediately regrets his drunken overreaction and mourned over Cletus for days on end. Alexander made many mistakes and had many flaws, but the cold-blooded killing of Cletus stands out. But even the worst of dudes can shed a tear and meet tragic heartbreak. I know if I don't mention he was married to a woman, people will get all butthurt, so yes, he was married to a woman, and yes, he had 3 children. But Alexander was very openly bisexual and very open with his preference for men. Women were aesthetic and political objects to him, but love had always laid in the hands of men. One in particular named Hephaestion. They were born the same year, grew up together, and learned under the supervision of Aristotle in Mysia. Arrian, Curtius, and Diodorus all documented their love. Small moments like when the Persian queen mistakenly knelt to Hephaestion instead of Alexander. Alexander pardoned the queen, saying, "You were not mistaken, mother, this man too is Alexander." Or how Hephaestion was replying to letters of Alexander's mother regularly, and once even wrote, "You know Alexander means more to us than to anything." And don't forget them laying a garland on the tomb of Achilles and Patroclus and running naked in their honor, the dead heroes who were also lovers. Hephaestion's epithet given by Alexander himself was Felix. It's a Greek word for friend, and it's one with special benefits. I can't say it. What's messed up here isn't their love, but how Alexander loses the good thing he had. While he's away, Hef falls ill. Alexander rushes back and is assured Hef would recover so he can go to the games that night. While he's at the games, Hef goes from fine to dead like that. Some accounts say that Hef was killed via poisoning. Alexander proceeded to have full-scale meltdown in his grief, refused to eat or drink for days, didn't pay attention to his personal appearance, rather silently mourned or lay on the ground screaming and cutting his hair off. He ordered that the manes of the horses be burned and shorn short. He commanded the demolition of all battles and banned flutes and every other type of music. Aristotle had even described their bond as one soul abiding in 2 bodies. It was evident when one left. Alright, pity party's over. Let's hear about this dude's god complex. Alexander's mother, Olympias, an intense woman who wasn't afraid to fight for what she wanted, told him that he wasn't actually the son of King Philip II of Macedonia. Instead, he was the offspring of the king of the gods, Zeus, who seduced her in the form of a lightning bolt. He heard, "You're a god." All I am hearing is his mom did the literal do with cosmic energy, and that couldn't have felt nice. How shocking! This revelation surely spurred on her son's hubris as he set off with the humble goal of conquering the world. Didn't help his ego that his mom was supposedly the relative of demigod Achilles, and his daddy's Philip's line went back to the demigod Hercules. And to help boost his story, he and his family claimed that his birth caused the annihilation of the Temple of Artemis. Apparently the goddess was so busy attending Alexander's birth, she didn't notice the temple burned to the ground. When he was forced to take his first and last break from conquest after his troops mutinied in 326 BC, he declared he should receive the honors of the gods in return. Many of his cities actually obligated and sent him religious delegations. Don't forget he thought himself so important, according to Roman historian Plutarch, Alexander founded no less than 70 cities after his health. To Alexander, all that mattered was his own power. When he died, his entire kingdom collapsed and his land was divided into new kingdoms. These kingdoms were at constant war with each other for power before falling to Rome. If you were really a demigod, would you have needed to cheat a prophecy though? Alexander's reputation made him out to be the most powerful military leader the world would ever see, which allowed him to take Egypt with little to no opposition, and struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. A large part of this reputation was because of his success with the Gordian knot. It was the stuff of legends, a knot attached to the yoke of a wagon at the temple of Zeus in the land of Phrygia. Wow factor, right? Anyways, knot was so complex, all that who tried to undo it supposedly failed. And plenty tried, for it was said whoever could do so would rule all of Asia. That's just the sort of challenge egotistical Alexander could not resist. The knot was made of rough bark with no visible ends, and it's widely held belief that instead of untying the knot, which would show his destiny, he became frustrated with it. Not wanting to lose face, Alexander whipped out his sword and cut the knot in two. AKA homeboy literally cheated on a divine mission. Are you telling me nobody else tried this? Nobody. Everyone really sat here and wrangled this knot until Alexander of all people came along with his caveman brain cells and go sharp things cut knots, and now everyone's terrified of him for undoing a knot he didn't even undo. Let's move on. And because it isn't ridiculous enough, he had a stupid, dramatic death. Alexander was a sufferer of a disease that 35 million plus people suffer from annually: substance abuse disorders. Nowadays we know this is a disease and something we can treat and work on, but back then homie just liked to party, maybe too much. He was known to get so hammered his doctors were concerned for his health. This is the guy who survived fighting in the front lines of many battles, including getting hit so hard on the head it cracked his helmet in two, and his doctors were worried alcohol would be his downfall. In fact, you guys, it was. When partying one night, 323 BC, he's given a large glass of wine. Alexander chugs it and shrieks in pain. His health rapidly declines, and 10 days later, dead. To this day, the exact cause of Alexander's death is unknown, but due to the nature of others' death, people surrounding Alexander were immediately suspects. Best as modern science can discern, it was most likely cause of death to be malaria, lung infection, typhoid, but as time progressed and science is now pointing us towards liver failure or cirrhosis from alcoholism, which would explain the painful scream. He didn't bother to father an heir to his throne or set up any sort of government on his deathbed. He claimed his kingdom would belong to the strongest, and his last words were, "I foresee a great funeral contest over me." And what a better way to end things off than the 3 wishes of Alexander. While he's on said deathbed, Alexander went into a depression. Realizing nothing was worth it, even after an extremely successful life, he couldn't avoid death. He wanted to see his mother for the last time before he departed, but he knew he wouldn't be able to, and he would soon pass away. So he called his loyal generals and made 3 last wishes before dying. They are as follows: I have 3 last wishes. Please carry them out for me, for soon I will depart. My first is that my doctors alone shall carry my coffin. I want doctors to carry my coffin to let everyone know no doctor can cure anybody. They are powerless, cannot save a person from death. My second wish is the path towards my grave shall be strewn with gold, silver, and all the precious possessions in my treasury while my body is being brought to be buried. To let people know that even though I spent all my life accumulating riches, not even a grain of gold will come with me when I leave this world. It is a sheer waste of time, energy, and peace of mind when one yearns to be rich. My third and last wish is that both of my hands shall be kept dangling out of my coffins. Having my hands dangling out of the coffin, I want people to know that I came empty-handed into this world, and likewise will go empty-handed from this world. Ironic, it takes losing a lover, his kingdom, his body, and his mind for this man to finally realize everything he fought for was not something he could take with him. And that's the end of it, folks. Thanks for sticking through, and I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe to see more of our content, and comment down below, was Alexander actually great or just full of hate? Actually great or just full of hate?
Nice. That last part kind of rhymes.